Hello again, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live. My name is Paul Pharma, and I'm just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to join, like I usually do. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to give you some background information. What am I going to give you today? Well, I've just come back from holiday in Lanzarote, which was rather nice. And it was quite interesting because while I was there, it was actually hotter here in the UK. And everybody was complaining because they've got no air conditioning and it's too hot and blah, 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 and hard to work. And of course, I'm in a nice air-conditioned environment. It's going in the pool, going to the sea. And Lanzarote's got a slight breeze anyway. And it's about 24, 25, so it was really comfortable. So although I went away and went on holiday to a cooler environment, I actually was more comfortable doing it. So I quite enjoyed it. A little bit about me. I'm the founder of Pharma Limited, founder of Academy Pharmaceutical Excellence, founder of Pharma Academy, joint founder of Pharma Quality Services Limited. I run a pharmaceutical consultancy. I have been in the pharmaceutical industry now 40 years, 4 decades. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Do I really look old enough? Let me know what you think in the comments. Just send me a comment because I will read all the comments, even if I miss them during the presentation. If you click, I think it's click authorized StreamYard, it will show me the comments while we're talking, but I won't say I'm the best at making sure I pick up on them all, but they are visible on the screen if I see them. But if you've got questions, please do write them in the comments and I'll pick up on them afterwards, because I go back and look afterwards, because of course not everybody watches live. Some people watch the recording, so I'll always come back and check. But if you are watching the recording, the best thing to do is to tag me in your questions. If you put @ and then start typing my name, it'll come up, and then you can tag Paul R. Palmer in the comments, and it'll make sure that I actually see it, because then I get a notification. Because I don't go back multiple time again unless I know something's there. So are we up to 2 minutes yet? I can't actually see the time. Why can't I see the time? That's strange. Okay, so today's topic: speak up, navigating difficult conversations in pharma. It's an important aspect of pharmaceuticals that people are often feel quite oppressed. They feel like they can't say anything simply because the person above them knows more. Well, in general, the person above them, the person more senior, has more experience, yes. But they might not necessarily know more about the individual process that they're working on. They might not be up to date with their CPD, the continuing professional development. Or it may be that somebody's told you about a new regulation that's coming and they're not quite aware yet. Or maybe it's not gone into the SOPs yet. There's multiple reasons why you need to speak up. So today we're going to talk about, I suppose, the issues of when you don't speak up, but also how to approach it, how to actually speak up without doing what I did in my first role, which was just going to a meeting and tell everybody the truth. And what I was supposed to do was actually warn the senior managers from the other departments beforehand what I intended to talk about, so they were actually ready, because it ended up that they didn't know what was going on. They didn't have the details because it had only just happened. And I was there in the middle of it because I was doing the statistical samples. So that was an interesting discussion, and I got pulled into the operation director's office afterwards, who wasn't all that happy. He appreciated getting the truth, but he didn't know how to deal with it because his team weren't telling him the facts. They were telling him a positive version of what was going on. It's probably the best way to put it. Okay, so let's get into the content. So, as you can see, the red light flashing, in the manufacturing environment where we should be producing our probably solutions for aseptic manufacture. And it's talking about what happens when people don't speak up. So often you'll find that a quality failures, people are aware of them. The deviation's not been raised yet, but somebody's noticed something's not quite right. But they don't think about doing anything about it. It's a bit different to normal, but it still meets the spec. And it's still in accordance with the SOP. So let's just let it go. They don't get on and speak up what the problem was, or maybe they delay telling somebody, or maybe they just ignore it because it's been going on for a long time. And last time they raised it, they were told to shut up and get on with it. Maybe. But it's important that things are raised when there's an issue, even if you're not quite sure why, because it can prevent errors. Raising concerns in a timely manner can stop recalls and, more importantly, patient harm. Now, I've done this many a time myself, and sometimes it went well and sometimes it went badly. And I understand why people don't speak up. And one of the reasons is because when they speak up and say there's a problem, they're told that they've got to go and fix it. And maybe they don't know how to fix it at the time. Another problem that we find is people are quiet. They don't want to raise the voice. One way that somebody told it to me once is they don't want to lift their head up above the parapet and get it shot off. Because when somebody challenges the status quo, when they challenge what they've been told to do, sometimes they're just told to get up and to shut up and get on with it and then be quiet. But if your culture is such that you encourage people to speak up and to fix problems in a timely manner, it's actually much better for the product. It's much better for the patient. But more importantly, well, I suppose not more importantly, but just as important, it's more beneficial for the company. Because when people challenge the silence, when they've got the ability or the confidence to speak up and say, well, we could do it this way and it'd be much better and we'd save this amount of time, I think maybe you get 2 batches out instead of 1, or you increase your output by 20%, or you get less downtime, or there's enhanced patient safety, or the analysis passes when it was going to be borderline. But today's focus is how to speak up professionally, confidently, and effectively. As I said before, I've been in this now 40 years, and I have learnt by making the mistakes. I have learnt by speaking up when I shouldn't and just saying what I thought at the time. But I've also learnt how to speak up in a way that people listen, how to talk to a senior manager in such a way that they understand what you need and why you need it. I've been in a fortunate position where I've been the person of authority, the person who's got the answers, I suppose. But I've also been in the position where I've been junior. I started in microbiology straight from school. I know it was a long time ago, but I still remember coming straight from school, straight into a lab, being the one in the, I suppose it was a kitchen. I think they had a different name for it, but it was the place where we used to make the media up in the microbiology. And I was there emptying the waste after it had been sterilized. So it's not like I've always been a QP. It's not like I've always been Dr. Paul R. Pharma. I have started on the shop floor. I did used to wander around and do the environmental monitoring and the filtering. But at the same time, when there was a problem, I needed to tell somebody. And I couldn't just tell the person on the line. I had to go and speak to the supervisor. And the supervisor doesn't want you to be saying that their line has to stop. But if there's a problem, then you have to. So I had to learn with experience. I learned by going in and talking to the supervisor first. I used to tell the operator, tell the supervisor, and provided they did something about it, I didn't have to go and tell the manager. But I also built up the relationships with the managers and the directors. because it was required. So I just learned how to do it. So hopefully you can learn from my experience. So why does it matter? Well, patient safety, number one. Every employee must have a responsibility to protect the patient. I can see a mistake there in an edit that I just made. So you must have. The point is, every employee has a responsibility, but often it's not driven by culture. Often it's not driven by procedures, and often it's not driven by the training. So it's essential that everybody knows they have a responsibility to protect the patients. Safety must outweigh hierarchy. So whatever level you're at, whatever position you're in, if there's a safety problem, if there's something that's going to result in a non-sterile product that's going to be injected into a patient, you have to raise the issue. It's really important that you just don't leave it to somebody else to find. Early intervention, fixing a problem early, raising concerns, can prevent minor issues becoming major quality failures. So what happens if the raw material that you're putting in doesn't look quite right? Maybe it's a slightly different color. Maybe it's not flowing the way that it normally does. When it goes into the mix, it clumps instead of spreading throughout the mix. And because it clumps and it's not there the way that it's normally present in the mix, well, maybe it just sits around and it goes around and the impeller doesn't break it up. And then you come to the end of the manufacture and you see this lump on the side, or you see a lump in a corner or in a place where it just gets stuck. Now, I know it shouldn't be like that, but imagine you get to the end and you just wash it down the hole and nobody says anything. And then you go off and you go to the next stage and it's been processed some more. But because you've lost that small part right at the beginning, that small excipient that actually is essential to the bioavailability of the active pharmaceutical ingredient, well, you go down the process and you go to the next stage and the next stage. And instead of that product being acceptable at the end, when it could have been changed, when it could have been fixed right at the beginning, when this raw material wasn't quite the way it is normally. Instead, you get to the end and you've added all that extra time. Maybe you've gone through, I don't know, a sanitization process. Maybe you've gone through pasteurization. Maybe you've got to the end. You've done some sort of filtration, and you get to the end and you realize that the active ingredient's not dispersed the way it's supposed to be. And then you go back up the process and you can't see anything wrong with the documentation. You think, what happened? And there's only that one person that knows. And if you don't talk to that one person, and if you don't find out that that raw material was not quite right, you make another batch. And the next batch fails as well, for exactly the same reason. And they just wash it down the drain. Oh, I did that last time, it's all right. But they didn't know that they rejected it because it was a later stage. And the managers got involved, but not the team. They didn't discuss why this is going wrong. Nobody told them there was a problem. So they just made the next one as requested. And then 3 weeks later, after 6 more batches have been down the drain, somebody thinks to go back and talk to the operators. Maybe you get the development team in and say, this product's not working right. Come on, fix it. And they go in there and they talk to the team. And the team say, oh, yeah, something's not quite the same as it used to be. Well, what's that? Oh, well, when we put this in here, blah, 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 blah. Ah, let's do another run. See if that's causing a problem. And you waste another batch because the same problem's still there. But they saw it and they saw the outcome, which they could have done 6, 7, 8 batches earlier and saved how many thousand? But more importantly, you're out of stock now. and the patient's not getting treated. And you have to notify the authorities. But if that one person felt confident enough to speak up and say, this is not quite right, and stop the process just because something wasn't quite right, you could have fixed it in half an hour at the beginning. Changed the batch of the raw material, because it was a new batch that had come in maybe. And those 8-10 batches would have been passed, and you'd be on market still. And the patients would be treated. So it's really important that you've got early intervention. Now, I am speaking from experience. And people are told to be quiet. They shouldn't. They should be confident enough to talk up when there's a problem. Speak up. Now we talk next about continuous improvement. Continuous improvement in a process, in a manufacturing environment, supported by a culture of continuous improvement, makes a massive difference. Open communication strengthens GMP compliance, which we just talked about in an early intervention stage. But it's throughout the whole process. It's always the case. It's in development. It's when you're talking about a new product, placing it on the market. It's when you've got an existing manufacturing process, and maybe you get somebody new coming into the team and they see something different to what they've seen when they've been at the previous job. And they talk about it with their team members, and the team members say, oh, well, that's fine. Talk to the supervisor about it. Maybe there's an opportunity to make things better because we have an open communication policy, and you might even get a benefit from it. So put it in as a continuous improvement recommendation, and you might get a prize, provided they don't go and take it themselves, of course. But open communication does make compliance better, always. It's much better than hiding something in the corner. I remember having a manufacturing failure. It was sterile manufacturing of some dressings in pouches. And the manufacturing team didn't find the integrity failure, but the people in QC did. Well, I said that the manufacturing team didn't, but actually they did have a lot of trouble setting it up. But they didn't change anything. They just ran it anyway because that's what they were told to do. Get on with it. We did our integrity testing. We did a statistical sample because the first one failed. I said, oh, we can do 100% inspection and take the defective ones out. They did. And we did our statistical sample and it failed. Oh, sorry, we made a mistake when we did our statistical sample. This bit was part done and this bit wasn't done. So we'll just do it again and then it'll pass. Now, this product had already been sterilized, but we had an issue with the integrity because it had gone away for gamma radiation and come back. Because we got the integrity failures, we got it back in and done the statistical sample. And they inspected it and it came back and it failed still. They weren't happy, but if they had addressed the problem at the beginning when they noticed there was an issue, well, then we wouldn't have had all the failures and we wouldn't have thrown 1.5 million packs in the bin. The whole week's production. So we're not happy, but what can you do? If it's not an integral pack for a sterile product that's going on open wounds, you can't do anything. You throw it in the bin. But if they'd raised the issue at the beginning and we'd looked at how to improve the product, well, actually, after the event, when it was in the bin, we did. And we changed the seals so that we didn't have that same issue again. Because one particular size, the biggest size in that production environment, often had that problem. They often had problems in the corner. And when we found failures, they inspected it and it failed. The person that had been in the supervisory role before I was there was more into commercial supplier than he was into making sure that the product was okay and safe. And he used to be under pressure to get things out, and he used to do it because the production manager said so. But I was in a position where I thought, well, that's going to impact the patient. We have to do it right. I've always been there thinking patient safety first. Maybe it's because I'm from microbiology. I understand the impact of sanitization. I understand the impact of a non-sterile pack, because that's what I've been doing for a long time. Not only when I was my first 6 years in microbiology, but ever since, I've also been consulting on microbiology to help companies deliver what they want, deliver a safe product. But why do people stay silent? Well, fear of being wrong. If they're wrong, what's going to happen? Are they going to get told they're wrong? Is the concern valid to raise? Somebody else must have said that. Somebody else must have raised that problem. If it's really, really wrong, if it's really an issue, somebody must have told them. Well, not necessarily. Conflict. They don't want conflict. They don't want to be shouted at. They don't want to get into an argument. They want to maintain the existing relationships with the other team members or their own internal. They don't want to cause confrontation because they want a nice, easy life. But it's not always the person that thinks they know everything that's got the best understanding. Production pressure. Now, commercial pressure, production pressure, get it out the door pressure is something that I've seen all the way throughout my career, always. But if you explain to them what it is that's the issue, what the potential impact could be, then usually you'll find that they're willing to address the problems. But you do need to be in a position where open communication is promoted within the organization. Targets and timelines do often discourage raising concerns, but imagine you're the one that's getting the sterile product injected that's not sterile. Or maybe it's your brother, maybe your sister, your mum, your child, a baby. And they get septic shock. And because you've sent all that product out under commercial pressure, it needed to go out quickly. That baby died. Or your mother died. Or your brother died. Maybe you died. I do know people that take their own product, QPs that have released a batch, that they know they've done the job properly, and they're happy to take the product that they know where it's been manufactured. They've been and they've done the oversight, the audit. They know where the testing is completed. They know everything's in control. That's what the chain of trust is about. That's what we do in the pharmaceutical industry. So we need to be open. We need to communicate. And if we see an issue, we need to raise it. Someone else has done it. Is a difficult one to address. When you've seen a record that's already been checked by 10 other people, but you see a problem that's, maybe it's at the beginning, nobody spotted it. You can't just assume somebody else spotted it. You have to speak up. If you speak up and you say that, yes, this has been missed, and it's already been addressed, well, you've not lost anything. You just make sure. But if you speak up and nobody saw it before, and then they realize that they can fix the problem now, before it gets into the finished pack, maybe you've saved somebody's life. Maybe you've saved a reject batch. Maybe you've saved an out of spec and a variation that makes the product take another 3 months to get to market, in which time the patient's out of stock because it's a highly sought after product. I remember doing this with Tegretol. It was what was it used for? It was anti-epileptic, and I identified the problem. I worked with the marketing team. We communicated with the MHRA. Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency. That's the agency in the UK. And I spoke up and I investigated and I looked into the detail and I proposed a solution. Not only that, I also identified the date when the problem would go away, because we got to the point where we knew the stock had been used up. And within a couple of days, I was correct. But you have to be the one that's willing to speak up. You have to be the one that's willing to do something, even if you're not the one that can do all the work. Because I worked with the team. I worked with my senior manager. I worked with the head of, well, was it the head of marketing? No, I think it was the marketing. Oh, I can't remember what the proper name is, but the one that was the head for that particular product. And we worked with the manufacturing site, which was our site, but it was in a different country. I didn't just ignore the problem. I didn't just close it out as the customer complaint. So yeah, they need to shake it up properly, which is what the other team was wanting us to do. I actually did the detailed investigation, predicted when it was going to be out, communicated with the MHRA, spoke up and made sure we fixed the problem. Because children were getting epileptic fits, and you don't want that, do you? I certainly don't want to be responsible for that. So I made sure that the improvement that was available was made. But what is the cost of silence? It's never neutral just to be silent. If a concern's not voiced, problems can compound. Well, I've talked about a few already. But it's ultimately the patient that gets harmed. You might also get repeat inspection observations, deterioration of quality culture, and as a direct consequence of a silent workforce, you might lose your license. Or maybe they're covering it up. Maybe they're not silent. Maybe they're just silent to you. Maybe they're just not speaking up. Maybe they're just keeping it, dulling it down. But it is the patient that we need to protect, because they're the ones that are getting treated. Or maybe they're not getting treated if we've forgotten something about the API. So it's important that everybody can take on the difficult conversations. They might have to challenge a senior colleague's decision, report a GMP error made by a friend or a colleague, raising data integrity concerns, or say, I don't believe this is compliant. Now, strangely, I've always found it quite easy to speak up. But the feedback, the outcome from speaking up isn't always what you expect. A senior colleague that you raised an issue with might say, well, just get on with it. But you have to be in a position where you can present the data. And we're going to talk about the approach in a minute. Reporting a friend is a difficult one. But you don't have to do it in a way that causes conflict. You can talk to them about it first. I know that's hard. But take a copy of what they're doing. Show it to them. I've noticed this. This is how it should be done. And this is what you've done. And they should take it as a learning opportunity. And if they don't, well, it still needs addressing. Data integrity is a big issue. Data integrity can take you off the market, so it has to be addressed. So raising data integrity concerns is essential. And the way to do it is to take a copy. I've got a concern about this. This is how you've entered this data, but this is how it should have been. Saying, I don't believe this is compliant, isn't as simple as that. You have to say, I have a concern with, because I've noticed this is what we need to be doing. It's not just, this isn't compliant. You can't do that. You have to have a more rounded discussion, more detail. So how do we do it? We focus on facts. If you know somebody's done something wrong, talk about the risk to the patient. Talk about the risk to the product. Talk about risk to the reputation of the company. Don't talk about the person that did it. Don't talk about why. Focus on the facts first. Ask first. Never assume. You always need to understand before you assume what's happened. Ask the question first. But more importantly, once you've asked the question, listen. Listening to the response is just as important as asking the question. Be calm. Stay calm and objective. Okay, they might say, oh, you're blaming me, and blah, 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 and just stay calm. I studied NLP back in 92, I think it was, neuro-linguistic programming. And one of the things that I really enjoy using is cross-transactions. And it's staying calm and speaking to them as an adult. Even if they start shouting and screaming at you, just keep it calm. You find it, you get a really good response from it. Go back to the facts. Offer solutions. You might have a problem, but if you can identify the solution, you're going to get a much better response and more support from senior management than if you say there's a problem. You need to deal with it. And of course, center your focus on patients. Keep safety as the anchor of every discussion. Patient safety. I remember when I first became a QP, I had some interesting discussions about not placing products on the market. Actually, I think it was when I was a trainee still. If we let this go out onto the market, somebody could die. When you talk about people dying, it seems to invoke a different response. And if it's true, it has to be true, then it's worth using that option. But if it's that they're not going to get treated and that their condition could get worse, say that. Or if they could have toxic shock, say that. Be honest, but focus on the patients and safety as a central point. Now, I'm saying every discussion, but because most of the time it applies. But if it doesn't, well, think about how it affects the patient and use that. Leadership have their own role in making sure this works. Make sure you've got a psychologically safe place. Make sure that challenge is welcomed, not criticized. I told you how to do it this way, you've got to do it this way. No. Oh, can you tell me more about that? Can you explain what you mean? And you can use it as a learning opportunity for them if they've not quite understood something right. Don't tell them just to shut up, because then next time when there is an issue, they won't tell you. Listen without being defensive. Respond consistently when a concern is raised. If you're defensive and say, oh, well, this is something I did, and I've never seen that problem, maybe they won't raise it next time, and maybe you will have the next batch rejected. It's really important that you listen to people's perspectives. Everybody's biased. I am biased. I do have a really strong patient safety bias. But at the same time, I understand commerce is required. We have to be on the market to be able to continue treating the patients. Recognize people that raise the risks early. Leaders need to recognize and build trust through transparency and action. If somebody raises an issue and you see that that actually fixes a problem and it ensures that your product is placed on the market in a timely manner, well, listen to them. But also feedback. Feedback and say, yes, we did something about that. Thank you for raising it. Costs you absolutely nothing. But actually, it will build a culture. And it'll make sure that they talk to you next time. I remember in my role as head of quality back in, 2005, 2004. No, I think I finished in 2004. No, 2004 to 2006, maybe. I intentionally put my office, let me go back a bit. So I intentionally made sure that the design of the facility, because we were just transferring to a new facility, and I volunteered to be the one to make sure that we had the right design for the facility, for the manufacturing environment, to make sure we got maximized the efficiency, but also a GMP compliant flow. But I put my team and myself at the point where the product was going to be released in manufacturing. Why? Well, that's the most efficient location. I wanted to be there, though, so that anybody that needed to talk to me about a problem, so that we could resolve it straight away. And I encouraged the whole manufacturing workforce to talk to me. What I'm pleased to say is they did. The production manager was up in the exec suite upstairs. She didn't get to hear about half the things that I did. And we addressed the problems before she was even aware of them a lot of the time. Because I was in the right place, because my team was in the right place to work with the workforce, to understand the problems and address them in a timely manner. And the supervisor came to us as well. We got the product out on time, in full, because we worked together. And the people, the ones that were early risk raisers, just walked into the office and said, there's an issue with this, can we address it? Or what do we do next? Or came with a solution, we could do this. Or it needs to go back and get reprinted, or whatever it was. But then I made sure that I built the relationship as the head of quality with those people that were the ones that were willing to raise the risks early, so that we can make sure we got the product out in a timely manner and didn't have to do the reworks. Regulators expect people to have the freedom to raise concerns, that employees feel safe to speak up without fear of retribution. They expect the investigations to be objective, investigate issues transparently, not defend the status quo, be open and address the problem. They expect leadership to be engaged, a visible commitment to quality at every level. Now, this is something that's become more and more apparent from all the regulators over time. They're all asking to talk to the board. Not always. Usually when there's an issue, especially when it comes to resource. And also, they expect learning over blame. They do not expect a blame culture. They don't expect you to say, oh, that person's left the organization now, without then saying, this is what we've done to fix the problem. They want to see a culture of improvement, not punishment. So what do you do to build confidence to speak up? Well, firstly, make sure you know your procedures. A good grounding in regulations will also give you authority to challenge, because it may be that your procedures are not quite right, or something's changed and you need an update. Put evidence together, prepare facts before feelings, gather the data. Now, this is something that I've done for a long time. I've always gathered data first, because that's the way you get it written up and signed off, by putting the data in place. A good practice is actually to practice the conversation. If it's something that's going to be difficult to talk about, make sure you know what you're going to say. Get your composure right. Talk about it in a mirror. I've had this problem. I found this issue. We need to do this. Even if it's a reject. Remember your responsibility to be professional, ethical. Duty underpins every concern. But you're responsible for patient safety. When the product goes out, when it ships, you have to be knowledgeable that you've done it right. You don't want to be there as part of the complaint investigation when there's been a serious concern that's happened to a patient. When somebody's died and they come to you and say, 17 people have died from this batch. What did you do? You don't want to be in that interview situation. You want to make sure that you are the one that's raised the issues when they come up. Courage. Speaking up, courage protects patients. It's not about conflict. It's about protecting patients. It's about protecting your colleagues and, of course, the organization. Every conversation has the potential to prevent a future failure. The most dangerous words in pharmaceutical quality. I noticed that, but I didn't say anything because I thought somebody else would have done. Or I noticed it and I raised it with my supervisor, but the supervisor just said to carry on because we had to get it out that day. If you have a strong quality culture, you need to be open, trust, and have the courage to speak. Thank you for joining today's session. I hope you found it useful. And a willingness to speak up can be difficult to get the confidence to do so. Can be difficult to start, and it can be difficult if you're in a blame culture. But it's up to the leadership to change that culture, not necessarily you. But that doesn't mean you stay quiet. What you have to do is you have to go in with the facts. You have to make sure when you do raise a concern that you've got it right, that you've got the details, that you've given them everything they need to make a decision. And if you're not quite sure, say, I've come up with this, I've got a concern about this, and I'd like to raise it with you. Don't give them oh, we need to reject this because, or this has got a problem with it and it needs to go in the bin. That's never going to work. You need to give the details. You need to give the facts. When you've got a problem, you need to raise it in a way that they're actually willing to listen, whoever it is that you're going to raise it with. And if you're not sure, think about it. Talk to a friend. Practice in a mirror. There's always a way. Okay. Thank you for joining. That's Paul Palmer, Dr. Paul Palmer, MBA, MSc, CBio. I didn't put all the rest on there because it just gets too long. I am a pharmaceutical consultant. I run a pharmaceutical consultancy with a team. I am a qualified person. I am the founder of the academy. So if you need some training, do let me know. Or you can welcome to visit the academy, pharmaceuticalexcellence.com. I said that at the beginning there, but there's no there. But you can see the link on the screen. Contact us on the email info@academypharmaceuticalexcellence.com or LinkedIn. If you're watching this on LinkedIn at the moment, just contact me. Send me a message. It's fine. YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you can make a comment or you can go and sign up and contact us on LinkedIn or on the email. The YouTube doesn't really have as an easy way of contacting, but you can leave comments. Okay. I hope you found that useful today. And that's it for now. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. And do come to the next one that Anetta's running later in the week. I'll talk to you soon.